With many people currently staying at home to protect themselves and others, and with countries around the world in various degrees of lockdown, video games have stayed at the forefront of one of the ways which we can entertain ourselves. Playing games can bring people comfort and joy. It can be a way to relieve stress, to escape from reality, something which at the moment I think quite a few people need. Video games can also be a great way to connect with friends and family, whether that's in-game or in the communities and events that build up around games such as competitions and Comic-Cons and all kinds of forums and stuff online. In our current situation, I feel it's becoming more widely accepted and acknowledged that video games are this positive force and can be good for people. It can help their mental health, it can help them feel positive and bring them joy and happiness, and it can be a great way to connect with friends and family. Even whilst planning out this video, my partner was playing Smash online with our friends whilst we hung out in the voice chat, which, is just another way for us to meet up with our friends, as it were. Myself and probably a great many other people could talk at length about how important video games are for some people in this current pandemic situation. They're very helpful to help people connect with friends and family. They're helpful to educate young children and older children at the time when they can't possibly go to school or their schooling isn't what it was before. And it's a great way for people to, connect when they can't physically be together. But in this video I want to be more specific than just generally how are video games important in a pandemic, and I want to focus specifically on ceremonies that we may have in video games. So before I jump into the main bit of the video, I want to talk through what is a ceremony. So obviously there are some ceremonies lots of us are very familiar with. You've got your weddings, your naming ceremonies, your funerals, but you've also got things that we might not consider ceremonies as such as a graduation or a housewarming party. These are still events that celebrate a milestone or a particular transition someone made in their life, going from one part of their life to a new journey they've decided to take, and they're important to celebrate, and that's where we usually have a ceremony come in to be that celebration and to mark that event in a more special way. Besides the spoken words in a ceremony, I would say there's probably two things that are important for a ceremony to have. So the first I would say is a location. You want a place for people to come and meet. You want your venue to probably be something important, either to yourself or to what that particular ceremony is for. So if you're having a housewarming party, you obviously want your house. If it's a graduation ceremony, you want it to be in the city or maybe even in the school or university that you're graduating from. So the location is important. Just even as a place to gather, even if it's your garden, that's a place where you can be like, yeah, that's where we're holding our ceremony. That's the physicality of where it will take place. The second thing that is important is the people. Even if you're just having an elopement, that's still two people, the two people of that couple who still need to be there. Or if you're having a huge naming ceremony or a huge wedding with 300 plus people, that's 300 people that you need to invite and that want to be there to celebrate with you. So it doesn't matter how many people you have, you need at least, one person to sit there and be like, yeah, this is my ceremony. They're the two things that we need, a location and the people to celebrate. The spoken word or the ritual of the ceremony comes from, the people gathering in that location. So we're not going to touch on that too much because that will obviously be different, wildly different between different people, but the location and how you get the people there will be roughly the same. How is it that video games can hold ceremonies? To answer this question, we need to understand that many of the most successful games in the world have some form of player interaction, or they have a space in which a community can build up around the game. Players will always find ways to interact, whether it's in-game in a multiplayer game or in an online forum discussing, different theories or different battle tactics, or if it's just talking with their friends at school or work or online, or maybe even going to events, competitions, Comic-Cons. These are all places that players will interact and eventually form some kind of community, whether that's a larger group or small friendship groups. And within that is where we can get people coming together to celebrate events. And that's where you have your ceremony. It's mostly within multiplayer games that you'll find these types of ceremonies coming out, mainly because they're the easiest way for people to get together in game and really experience something as close as possible to the ceremonies we might have in real life out in the actual world. I'd say particularly in multiplayer games where you get to customize your character, make it, more you, an avatar of yourself out there that can be out in the game world, and where you get to customize other bits and pieces such as what you'll wear or your house and your environment. You These are the ones where we find ceremonies are more likely to crop up. Now, not all multiplayer games involve the players getting to know each other. They may not even form a tight-knit community, but in some it's an almost vital part of the game. It's in these games where player interaction is encouraged and is even, catered for. That's why we're seeing some of these ceremonies. There's 2 games I'm going to talk about in this video. The first I'm basically talking about because you couldn't do a video or a blog or even a news article about video games in the pandemic and not mention this. It's been huge. And the second one is because it's one of my personal favourite games and it lends itself really well to communities holding ceremonies. There's even ceremonies already in it. So yeah, I thought that would be a good one to pick as well. So the first game, Animal Crossing New Horizons. This is the latest game in the Animal Crossing series, and for some friends I know who are playing it, it's been a bit of a lifesaver during this super weird time. If you were surprised that this is the game I'm mentioning, where have you been? For me personally, this game has been everywhere. My Twitter fills up with people talking about their turnip prices, and there's cute screenshots everywhere, so yeah, had to talk about this. The aim of New Horizons is to build up your island town. You start with just a tent, and through busy work like fishing, gardening and crafting, you work your way up to owning a nice house and build up a thriving community of villagers around you. It has a cutesy art style, the main gameplay is nothing life or death, and it has a creative side to it, with many features being customizable. From your island, you can visit others, including the islands of other players. This is where the social aspect of the game really comes in. Many of my friends visit each other's islands for a variety of different reasons, but I get the impression it can feel, at least a little, like hanging out in real life. You can go shopping, take photos, and just generally explore the islands together. There's museums and shops to explore on different islands, and different people build up gardens, or they build landscaped areas. So really, if there's something in the real world, you bet someone's probably made it in Animal Crossing. Where does this leave us in terms of ceremonies? So as I touched on before, all you really need for a ceremony is the location and the people. In Animal Crossing, you have both of these easily available. The location is any island you and your friends can get to, and the people are you and your friends. If there's an event you want to do in real life, you can bet it can probably be recreated in Animal Crossing. I was particularly impressed with one player who recreated Comic-Con and invited a bunch of their friends to come along in cosplay. It might not count as a ceremony, but it's certainly an interesting way to recreate a much-loved event and socialise with friends. I've also seen online people hosting birthday parties. One of my friends hosted this one for their friend nicknamed Kiwi, so of course they decorated accordingly. Then there have of course been Animal Crossing weddings. Most couples I've seen doing this have had to postpone their in real life weddings, so being able to mark your postponed date with a set, wedding, you can walk down the aisle, you can have all your friends gather there, can be a really cathartic way to spend that day. Animal Crossing are also soon to introduce a wedding season event, so this will make it even easier to customise your location with wedding items such as cakes, furniture and arches to help you create an even more magical in-game ceremony. It takes time and effort to customise the area and customise what you're going to wear, whether it be a wedding outfit, a party outfit, or dressing up like your favourite character for a cosplay event. And it feels more special because these people have gone out of their day, just like they would for a real ceremony, to dress up in a way that they feel is appropriate. This makes it feel more special and can really help bring that ceremony to life if everyone has taken time out of their day and put effort into dressing in a certain way so that it matches what you want from your ceremony. I am not going to say much more on Animal Crossing because I think you vaguely get the gist. If it exists in real life, you can make it in Animal Crossing. Overall, I think it's definitely helped brighten people's day, whether they've just been fishing, wishing on a star, or gone along to events and ceremonies like those I've already mentioned. The second game I'm going to talk about is Final Fantasy XIV, which is the second MMO in the long-running Final Fantasy series. MMO, for those that don't know, stands for Massively Multiplayer Online, which, as the name suggests, means that multiplayer interaction is a big part of the game. In MMOs, players have always had a pretty strong sense of community, which is probably what you'd expect from a game where the core gameplay does rely on players running things as a group. These communities can be found in-game in either the guilds or the free companies, or they can be found outside of the game. Many of these guilds and free companies will have set up Discord servers or Facebook groups, and then even if you're not in that, you've got the wider kind of online presence of a game where people can hang out and form communities and bonds with different people who also like the same game as them. Because of their nature, MMOs have often had ceremonies crop up even in the past. For example, one of the free companies on my Final Fantasy XIV server often throw balls, single mixers and many other events, all of which are completely player driven. Some of these you wouldn't exactly call ceremonies, but you can still see from there how easy it is to jump from just a bunch of people hanging out on a friend's birthday to getting more towards something like a wedding ceremony or something that we would consider a bit more of a traditional ceremony. Now, Final Fantasy XIV in particular does offer actual wedding ceremonies in-game. The ceremonies in 14 are called a ceremony of eternal bonding, so the name's right there, ceremony. These ceremonies include a set time and date slot, guest invitations must be sent to the other players for them to be able to attend, and an actual ceremony occurs including a ring exchange. So there again, you have the necessary components for a ceremony. The words are laid out for you, you have a set location with the chapel, and people in attendance are the other players you choose to invite. These online weddings have long been a way for people to enjoy their time together and celebrate a bond. Maybe just between friends or between couples whose online friends cannot make their wedding date in real life. Now, in the time we're in, this could be a great way for couples to experience a wedding ceremony. It's not going to be the same as a real wedding ceremony out in the world with all your friends and family close, but it's probably the closest you can get in a game that's not explicitly designed as, say, a wedding ceremony simulator or something involving some kind of virtual reality. Since weddings, in the form of ceremonies of eternal bonding, are already a part of the Final Fantasy XIV landscape, I haven't seen them talked about or discussed in the same way that I've seen people share around weddings and parties from Animal Crossing. There is, however, one ceremony that I have seen discussed with regards to Final Fantasy XIV. This is a funeral march that was held in memory of a player known as Fern Leroy. This was organised by Fern's Free Company, which in 14 is kind of like your guild, your group of friends that you're probably closest to, people who may eventually end up feeling like family to you. The funeral march involved lots of players from across the server and data centre. The players spent an hour walking from one of the main city hubs through the world to the Guardian Tree. In-game, this is a sacred place to the local non-player characters, a place connected with nature, somewhere mostly peaceful and open to players of any level. Many ceremonies have symbolic elements, whether it's the exchanging of rings in a wedding ceremony or the lighting of candles to mark someone who has passed or cannot be with us. Here, I would say that choosing to end the march at the Guardian Tree brings a sort of symbolism to the ceremony, even though it isn't a physical event. The ceremony was hosted by Fern's close friend and Free Company leader, Liefeld de Moonchild, who started with a popular funeral poem called When I'm Gone, before moving on to a very touching eulogy. Following this, others shared their stories of Fern before those who didn't know her offered messages of love and condolences. Final Fantasy XIV also has emotes, and many used the emotes for pay respect, moment of silence, and others to honour Fern. Watching the videos for this and seeing many of these hundreds of players gather is really quite emotional and touching. I think this was an amazing way for people to pay respects to their friend, or to just pay respects to this other warrior of light, this other player that they perhaps didn't even know. I think the fact that this event got shared so widely in so many different news stories and articles, even making its way to being shared on the Celebrant Directory's Facebook page, proves the power and impact ceremonies can have on us, even when we're not physically together to hold them. The emotions are just as raw, the words just as heartfelt, and it can be really just as meaningful to those who are present in-game to experience these ceremonies and events. So whether it's a wedding, party, even a funeral or memorial, there's clearly places in video games for players and communities to be able to celebrate their events and hold ceremonies. When we hold a ceremony, it lets us celebrate joy, happiness and love. It lets us collectively feel our grief and loss and to celebrate someone's life. Ceremonies allow us to acknowledge what we have come through together and continue to celebrate in a way that says, yes, these events are meaningful. Just because you can't go out and physically hold them doesn't make them lose their value. It's not as much the ceremonies themselves that are important, but what they represent, the moments, milestones and celebrations that they're there to celebrate and acknowledge. Just because a wedding ceremony doesn't take place on a particular date doesn't mean that the couple love each other any less. Their friends and family still love them, they still want to have that special day, But because it can't take place on that exact date, that's a lot of time, money, effort, perhaps dreams that have gone into that day. These are important moments and milestones and transitions in our lives that we're no longer able to celebrate in the way that we wanted to. If people can find some peace in holding ceremonies online, and they can get joy and happiness and maybe even some closure from those, then I think that can only be a good thing. Many people make great lifelong friends from video games, all the communities, the events that pop up around them, and so many people have always, gone online as a way to celebrate birthdays with their friends or to just generally hang out. And I think the situation we're in now, without being able to physically see friends, has really highlighted how important those spaces online can be. To answer this video's title, I think video game ceremonies do hold an important place within the current global pandemic. Even though these ceremonies may not take place in a physical location and you may not be able to hug your friends and family and feel the atmosphere around you, you can still have that special moment. You can still mark the occasion, you can still acknowledge those feelings and emotions that that moment gives you, and you can still be with your friends and family to celebrate a milestone or the transition that the person hosting the ceremony is going through. These ceremonies can help people find a new sense of peace and contentment in a world that maybe doesn't feel as safe and secure as it once was. I'm pretty certain that in-game ceremonies will never replace the physical ceremonies that we still hope to have in the future and we're still planning and looking forward to, but they're still a great alternative, particularly at the moment, and they allow people to connect still and celebrate those moments that they otherwise might have missed out on. These ceremonies can help bring joy and happiness despite everything that the world is currently throwing at us. So I think that's about it. I think I've pretty much, in some rambling way, covered everything that I wanted to say. So via my 2 case studies of Animal Crossing and Final Fantasy XIV, I hope that shows you how video games, even if they're not your cup of tea, can really help people within those communities to feel connected and still get to celebrate their life events and moments in a meaningful way. If you like this video, give it a like, I guess. Feel free to leave a comment on what you thought, and if you've been part of any video game ceremonies or have thrown some kind of birthday, wedding, anything like that, if you've thrown something like that for yourself or for other people in a video game, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to see pictures, because these are the interesting things people are sharing at the moment when we can't all go out and adventure or have different other interesting things happen. So yeah, share your stuff with me, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed this.